right, so good morning. Welcome to
Morning.
the party. It's June 14th, 2019. We're here with Ashley Sawyer from Girls for Gender Equity based in Brooklyn, New York. And this is our monthly member spotlight. As many of you know, each month we, at the Dignity in Schools campaign, highlight the super dope work that our member organizations are doing towards advancing, education, justice, for our young people, for our folks. And that definitely includes our girls, our sisters, our women. And so we're really, really glad to get a chance to highlight and elevate the work of Gigi and learn a little bit more about it. So I'm joined by Ashley. Ashley, thank you so much for being involved. And if you could, tell us a little bit about yourself and by extension, who Gigi is and what is the work that you all do.
Certainly. Thank you for having me, and thank you for lifting up the work of Girls for Gender Equity. As you said, my name is Ashley, and I use she and her pronouns, and the work of GGE has been going on since 2001. We've been around for almost 20 years now. Our founder and executive director, Joanne Smith, was a social worker. She started GGE was supposed to be an 18-month fellowship focused on increasing access to sports for girls of color in Brooklyn, New York. What happened, unfortunately, during the time that she was running the program was an 8-year-old Black girl was sexually assaulted on her way to school. And the school that she was attending didn't really have any wherewithal or support or resources to support this Black girl. And so Joanne basically took the organization that was supposed to be a short-term thing and committed herself to an ongoing effort to address the systemic barriers that prevent youth of color, cis and trans girls, gender nonconforming youth of color from living self-determined lives. And so the two vehicles that she thought of to create opportunity for young folks and to remove those systemic barriers were sports, engagement in sports, and social justice organizing. Over the years, we sort of moved away from the sports programming, but we still run 2 youth programs and an after-school program. And all of our work is committed to social justice organizing and helping young people understand the systems and the context around them. And GGE has focused our work primarily on addressing the issue of school-based gender violence and gender-based violence in the community. And we have a very broad understanding of gender-based violence. We recognize that in addition to the interpersonal sexual violence that a young person might experience in their homes or within their schools, we also have to call out state violence. And we think about that as prisons and policing, and recognizing the ways that girls of color, non-binary youth of color, queer and trans youth of color are disproportionately impacted by sexual violence through prisons and policing, and juvenile prisons are included in that conversation. So that's the work of GGE. We just had a very successful win this week. The city of New York has their budget process, and it looks like the city has approved the hiring of 7 Title IX coordinators. And Title IX was the federal law that Joanne had been using throughout the duration of GGE's history to really think about how do public schools do the work to keeping young people safe, and how do public schools do the work of creating equitable environments and access for young folks. So that's a tool to use to prevent sexual violence. It's a tool to support pregnant and parenting students. And we're really excited to see what the next year can look like. We're looking to these Title IX coordinators to be prevention tools. Our goal is to create cultures of consent within New York City public schools. It's the largest school district in the United States, 1.1 million students. We're looking to just really radically transform the way that students understand consent and power and privilege, and really learn to be in community with one another in a way that does not promote rape culture or sexual violence.
Fantastic work indeed. And one, again, congratulations. And that leads me to another question leading in that direction. That so I know that the budget has been tentatively passed in ways that allow you all to claim this as a victory. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Is there any ongoing conversation about the process of hiring these Title IX coordinators, and to what extent is GGE want to involve in that process? Because I know often what happens is that we'll secure a victory and then it'll be absorbed into this larger network of things
Right.
to use the power that we've built. So what do you all anticipate or what role would you all like to play if you, in an ideal world, in helping this conversation around Title IX coordinators in the city?
Exactly. From day one, we've said that we do not want these Title IX coordinators to be check the box type compliance officers. Certainly, the City Department of Ed is going to use them to ensure that they're compliant. But really, what we want, like I said, is to be culture shifters. And so we've actually drafted a model job description for the Title IX coordinators that we've shared with City Council and that we are sharing with Chancellor Carranza, who we've already met with. And our draft job description is a really good way for us to get out in front of the hiring process. We have included recommendations that came from President Obama's administration. His administration put together a 2015 guideline about what Title IX coordinators can and should be doing. But the issue isn't really what they can do, it's about what the DOE is going to commit them to doing. And so we are really emphasizing that these folks need to be culturally competent. They need to be able to serve and meet the needs of students with disabilities. They need to be able to serve and meet the needs of students of color. Unfortunately, 2 months ago, there was a lawsuit filed on behalf of 4 girls of color, Black and Latinx girls who had been either sexually assaulted or sexually harassed in their New York City public school. And all 4 girls had special education needs, and all 4 girls were girls of color. And so what we're saying is the DOE needs to do their part to create safety for our young folks. And that is not going to come with a bunch of suspensions. That's not going to come through a bunch of kids getting kicked out of school. What that's going to come is the adults doing their part to make sure young people understand what's appropriate, making sure that young people understand that booty tag is not an appropriate game for school, that and that adults really have a huge responsibility to play in this. And I want to just name that we're looking to these Title IX coordinators to be people who have that understanding of power and privilege and the systems that create the environment where sexual violence takes place. And so, yeah, we've crafted all of that. The Obama administration's guidance names some floors, some bare minimums that these people should be doing. And so what we're asking for is a whole new vision around what school leadership can look like, and how does that look like with partnering with staff and students to just change the way we protect our young people. And we just have to name the racial justice component to this, because the incidents of school-based sexual harassment and assault disproportionately occur in schools where there's students of color. And it's not because students of color are more dangerous or more violent. It's because they are more likely to attend schools where they are understaffed and the adults don't have the capacity, really. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but the adult staff members just have too many students and are not able to keep track of what's happening. What are the cultural things that are happening in the school? Are students playing games that could be harmful? Are students using terms that are homophobic or transphobic? Are students engaging in things that where we need as adults to interrupt and say, let me educate you, let me talk to you about how do we shift culture?
Nice. No, exactly. And what it brings to my mind is, the kind of colloquial terminology is often used in Black communities about the crabs in a barrel kind of context, but we often don't talk about in that like the barrel is not the natural environment for the crab. Mm-hmm. And so the way that these structural realities encourage and discourage certain types of behavior, then it becomes really important for us to inject, programmatic relief valves and release valves to touch and reach our folks. So that's really fantastic work. And I know our time is small, so we're gonna jump into this. I think what will be our last question that you kind of set it up nicely for now is that you're talking about the work that you all are doing and what you envision for these Title IX coordinators, not just checking boxes, but really having substantive impact. In 2016, you all released the School Girls Deserve report. And so I kind of want to transition from like this present victory in the context of the work that you've been doing, because we know this is the long haul work. Right. So when you say the school, what is the school that girls deserve?
Awesome. Thank you for naming that. So in 2016, some of my predecessors at Girls for Gender Equity, including Dignity in Schools chair in New York, Kate McDonough, my colleague Brittany Brathwaite, Khadijah Hudson, they had put together a participatory action research process where young folks were able to engage in the research development for this report. And so we say that because it comes from a really radical idea that there's nothing for us without us, so that young people should should not be the subject of a study or research, and understanding, particularly for communities of color, the ways that research has been used to harm us in the past, right? So they did this PAR process, participatory action research, where young people, 100 young people from New York City public schools were able to engage their colleagues and engage in research. And the outgrowth of that was a report that said, these are the things that young people have said are barriers preventing them from engaging in an equitable, fair, safe educational environment within New York City public schools. And the main things that came up as barriers were school-based sexual harassment, which is why we launched our campaign to hire Title IX coordinators. Another thing was school-based criminalization, racism, and another thing that came up in that report was culturally relevant curricula. Young people were not seeing themselves reflected in the things that they were being taught within school. So the report said, this is what the New York City Department of Education and really across the country, these are the things that we need to make young people, cis and trans girls, non-binary youth, gender non-conforming youth feel safe. They don't want metal detectors. They don't want more school police. They want more culturally relevant curricula, and they want to feel safe from violence. And so we basically are actually beginning to launch some technical assistance for DOE schools. We're putting together a curriculum and a process now so that schools can look to Girls for Gender Equity to figure out how can they be a more culturally affirming environment? How can they do a better job of supporting queer and trans youth? How can they do a better job supporting girls? How can they do a better job of addressing toxic masculinity within their school, addressing patriarchy, racism, and systems of oppression? So that's work that we're growing in addition to the policy work that we can continue to engage in. The policy and movement building team that I have the privilege of leading, we're continuing to push city and state local officials to create schools that young people deserve, which are schools that are healing, schools that are affirming, and schools that acknowledge the identities of the students that come in, and schools that are really not just teaching kids math, science, reading, which is crucial and important, but also schools that are teaching young people about the social justice organizing that took place to create the environments that we live in. And so that's what we're doing. I highly encourage folks to read the report. It's still relevant a few years later, and we are looking forward to continuing to engage in policy advocacy alongside young people to make the recommendations from the report a reality.
Definitely beautiful stuff. So we're definitely going to have to do a part two, because there's a whole lot of unpacking we have to get into, and then even getting to talk about some of the programmatic things that GGE is doing and those kinds of things. So we want to just, again, elevate and amplify the work, the good work that's being done. So as we get ready to land this plane, what are some things that DSC membership, non-DSC membership, folks in New York, folks not in New York, what are some things that they and we can do to support the work that GGE is doing, and how can folks connect with y'all?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, first, I think it's important for us to be recognizing the way that our movements are in tandem, right? GGE sees ourselves at the intersection of the movement for Black lives and the Me Too movement. Our founder, executive director, Joanne Smith, has said that so much of the work is lifting up the way that people of color, girls of color, youth of color are impacted by school-based, gender-based violence and community violence. And so we look to the members of DSC across the country to think about, when we're looking to dismantle the school to prison pipeline, where we're looking to address issues of school-based arrest and criminalization, thinking about how are girls impacted by that? How are kids who are gender nonconforming, thinking about kids who whose gender presentations or identities don't align with what adults think they should? How are they impacted by these systems of criminalization, so that we are not leaving anybody behind, right? We are lifting up our whole community. We want to liberate folks. And at GGE, we use a Black feminist curriculum, and we think about that with our young people, but also in our policy work. And we would love to talk to more DSC members about how we can work in partnership to make sure that gender equity is not forgotten, and that our movements are intersectional, and that we are not leaving anybody behind. And so I just look forward to folks staying on our email address. Please follow us on all the social. We have a comms team now, so our social media is popping. You can find us at GGE NYC on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, GGE NYC, and I hope folks will continue to engage with us. I'm so grateful for the work of Dignity in Schools and the partnerships and relationships, really, the relationships that we have built through DSC, local and national, and it's just an incredibly crucial part of our work.
Cool, cool, cool. Well, thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work. Thank you for your time. People that are watching the video, if you liked it, shared it. If you don't like it, share it anyway, because we got to amplify our work, and it's good
Awesome.
stuff. So thank you, Ashley. Take
Thank
care, and
you.
I will chat with you soon.